She grabbed the wrong dog from the pet groomer, not knowing it belonged to a millionaire who would fall in love with her. It sounded like the title of one of those cheap romance novels that Claire Thompson secretly adored but would never admit to in public. Except this wasn't a made-up story. It was her life turning upside down on a Friday afternoon in Boston, as the rain fell so hard that even the old maple trees seemed to bow. It was exactly at that moment she ran into Positively Chic, soaked like a poodle after a bath, that fate decided to play clumsy Cupid. "Cookie!" shouted Claire, shaking out her wet hair as she looked for the little ball of fur she had dropped off for grooming 3 hours ago. "I'm here for my baby." The new attendant, a girl with purple hair and deep dark circles that betrayed a sleepless night, just pointed to a row of kennels where several dogs awaited their owners. Claire immediately spotted a Yorkshire Terrier with a blue bow, exactly as she had requested for her little companion. Without a second thought, she opened the kennel, picked up the little dog, and nestled him against her chest. "There, my love, let's go home. You look even more handsome after that bath," she whispered, covering the animal's snout with kisses, while he wagged his tail frantically. What Claire didn't know, and would find out in the worst way possible, was that there was more than one Yorkshire Terrier with a blue bow at the shop, and the one in her arms wasn't her Cookie, but the pet of Ethan Cole, the enigmatic heir to the country's most prestigious fashion empire. A man who, coincidentally, shared the same last name as her, although their lives couldn't be more different. Meanwhile, across town, in a penthouse apartment overlooking Boston Common, Ethan glanced impatiently at his watch. His driver should have picked up Cookie an hour ago. He had a charity event that night, and as ridiculous as it might sound, his little Yorkshire Terrier was his good luck charm. He never closed a big deal without having the little dog nearby, and tonight promised to be decisive for his brand's international expansion. "Richard, where is Cookie?" he asked into the phone, barely containing his irritation. "I need him here in 30 minutes. The answer on the other end of the line made his blood run cold. Cookie was no longer at the pet shop. Someone had taken his dog by mistake, and nobody knew who it was. Ethan was not a man who lost his composure. At 35, he had built an empire, faced economic crises, and negotiated with the most ruthless sharks in the market. But at that moment, something inside him shattered. Cookie was more than a dog. He was the last memory of his grandmother, the only person who had ever truly loved him unconditionally. "Find this person," he ordered, his voice one that would make even the most experienced of his managers tremble. "Use the security cameras. Do whatever it takes. I want my dog back tonight." What Ethan didn't imagine is that when he finally found the woman who had kidnapped his precious Cookie, his life would change forever. And not just because he would get his good luck charm back. There was something about Claire that he was about to discover, something none of his millions could buy. As the storm worsened over Boston, two hearts beat to different rhythms, completely unaware that they were about to collide. And when they did, not all the money in the world would be able to prepare Ethan for the hurricane that was Claire Thompson entering his meticulously planned life. Claire arrived at her small apartment in Somerville, kicked off her soaked shoes, and placed the Yorkshire Terrier on the bed while she prepared a towel to dry him. That's when she noticed something strange. Her Cookie always ran straight to his toy box as soon as he got home, but this little dog remained seated, looking at her with curiosity as if awaiting instructions. "Cookie, are you okay, my love?" she asked, moving closer to examine the dog. That's when she saw it. The brown patch on his chest that her Cookie had since he was a puppy wasn't there. This Yorkshire Terrier had a perfectly golden coat without a single mark. "Oh my God," she whispered, feeling panic rise. "You're not Cookie." As if understanding every word, the little dog tilted his head to the side and let out a sharp bark. Claire noticed something she hadn't seen before. A very fine leather collar, almost hidden by the abundant fur, with a small gold tag that read "Cookie" and a phone number. A bizarre coincidence, the dog she'd taken by mistake had the same name as hers. But while her Cookie wore a simple collar, bought on sale, this one had something that looked like it came straight from a Newbury Street boutique. "I have to call the pet shop," she mumbled, grabbing her phone with trembling hands. But before she could dial, the device vibrated with a message. "Closed due to the storm. We will reopen tomorrow at 9 a.m. Great, she was stuck with the wrong dog until the next day. She decided then to call the number on the collar. Meanwhile, Ethan had canceled his appearance at the charity event, something he had never done before, and was reviewing the security footage from Positively Chic for the third time. There she was, a woman with curly brown hair, completely drenched, picking up his cookie and rushing out. "Did you identify her?" he asked the private investigator he kept on payroll for emergencies, usually related to industrial espionage, never for locating kidnapped dogs. "Yes, sir. Claire Thompson, 28, freelance graphic designer. Lives less than 10 blocks from here." Ethan frowned. "Thompson? The same last name as mine?" "Pure coincidence," the investigator replied. "She has no relation to your family. In fact, she's from humble origins, raised by her grandmother in Rochester. Moved to Boston 3 years ago to try and make a career in design." Something about that information touched Ethan. He too had been raised by his grandmother, albeit in completely different circumstances. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. Unknown number. "Hello," he answered curtly. "Hi, good evening." The female voice on the other end sounded nervous. "My name is Claire Thompson, and I think I accidentally took your dog from Positively Chic today. A Yorkshire Terrier named Cookie." Ethan felt a wave of relief, immediately followed by irritation. "Do you have any idea of the trouble you've caused? I canceled important engagements because of this mistake." There was a silence on the other end, then a sigh. "Look, I am so sorry. I'm also desperate because my dog, who is also named Cookie, believe it or not, is missing. I took yours by mistake because they look so much alike, and where are you?" Ethan interrupted. "I'll send my driver to pick up Cookie right now." "The pet shop is closed," Claire explained. "I can't get my dog until tomorrow, and I assume yours is still there. Can we sort this out in the morning? I promise I'm taking good care of him." Ethan was not used to waiting. He was not used to being contradicted. And he certainly wasn't used to depending on the goodwill of strangers. "I'll be at your address in 20 minutes, he said simply, and hung up. Claire stared at the phone, incredulous. The man hadn't even asked where she lived. How did he plan to show up at her door? The answer came in the form of a text message seconds later with her full address, including the apartment number. A shiver ran down her spine. Who was this man who could find her address in minutes? And why was a dog so important that he would cancel engagements and show up at her house on a stormy night? Looking at the little Yorkshire Terrier, who was now sleeping peacefully on her bed, Claire had a premonition. Her life was about to change drastically. What she didn't know was whether it was for better or for worse. Minutes later, Ethan Cole was known for his obsessive punctuality. Claire's apartment buzzer rang. She had used the time to change clothes, tame her rebellious hair, and try to make the small apartment look minimally presentable, though she knew it was like trying to hide the sun with a sieve. She took a deep breath and opened the door. The man standing in the hallway made her heart skip a beat. Tall, broad-shouldered, with meticulously styled black hair and piercing green eyes that seemed to analyze her as if she were a spreadsheet. He wore a suit that certainly cost more than all the furniture in her apartment combined. "Claire Thompson?" he asked, though it was clearly a formality. "Yes, and you must be Cookie's owner," she replied, trying to maintain her composure, a slight arch of an eyebrow. "Ethan Cole," he extended his hand. Claire felt a tingle as their fingers touched. "Probably static," she told herself. "The storm and all. Please come in." "Cookie is asleep on my bed," she said, stepping aside so he could pass. Ethan took a few steps inside and stopped. His eyes scanned the small apartment. Claire felt her face burn. Her home was modest, but cozy, decorated with vintage pieces and artwork she had created herself. A world completely different from what he was used to, she imagined. The smell of his expensive cologne, something woody and citrusy, instantly mixed with the smell of brewed coffee and oil paint that always filled her apartment. "It's cozy," he commented, and Claire couldn't decipher if there was sincerity or condescension in his voice. "Sorry I don't have a waiting room with Carrara marble and an Italian leather sofa," she retorted, unable to contain the sharp tongue that always got her into trouble. To her surprise, Ethan gave a half smile, the first since he'd arrived. "I prefer environments like this," he said, and something in his eyes suggested he was being sincere. "My grandmother had a house like this. Small, but every inch told a story." The comment caught Claire off guard. It wasn't what she expected from a man who looked like he'd stepped straight out of the pages of Forbes. "Your dog is this way," she said, guiding him to the bedroom. On the way, Ethan noticed the drawings on the walls. Fashion illustrations with a distinct style which immediately caught his professional attention. "Did you do these?" he asked, stopping to look at one in particular, an evening gown with architectural elements inspired by the autumn maples, a symbol of New England. "Yes, drawing is my job. And my escape," she explained. "I'm a freelance designer, but I dream of working in fashion one day." Ethan looked at her with renewed interest. There was genuine talent in those drawings, a fresh perspective that his brand could very well use. Before he could comment, an excited bark interrupted the moment. Cookie had woken up and, upon seeing his owner, jumped off the bed and ran to him, his little paws sliding comically on the hardwood floor. Ethan bent down and picked up the dog, who licked his face enthusiastically. It was the first time Claire saw him truly smile, a smile that completely transformed his austere face, revealing unexpected dimples and an almost boyish glint in his eyes. "Thank you for taking care of him," Ethan said, his voice softer now. "Cookie is special to me." "I understand completely," Claire replied, thinking of her own Cookie still trapped at the pet shop. "My dog is my family too." A particularly loud clap of thunder shook the windows, making Claire jump. Outside, the storm had worsened considerably. "I don't know if it's safe to drive in these conditions," she commented, looking worriedly at the rain lashing the windows. Ethan checked his phone. "My driver confirms the main streets are flooded." He suggests waiting for the rain to let up. An awkward silence settled between them. Claire Thompson, freelance designer with overdue bills, and Ethan Cole, fashion magnate, trapped together in a tiny apartment during a storm. The universe definitely had a sense of humor. "Would you like some tea?" she finally offered. "Or I have cheap wine, if you prefer something stronger to deal with the trauma of being stuck here with me." Ethan stared at her for a moment. Then he laughed, a genuine sound that surprised them both. "Cheap wine sounds perfect," he replied. "It's been a while since I've had anything that wasn't approved by a pretentious sommelier." As Claire went to the kitchen, Ethan looked at the drawings on the wall again. There was something special there, a unique vision that blended perfectly with the new collection he was planning. Maybe this canine kidnapping wasn't just an inconvenience. Maybe it was an opportunity, personally and professionally, that fate had placed in his path. And for the first time in years, Ethan Cole, the man who planned every minute of his life, decided he didn't mind seeing where this unexpected night would lead. With 2 glasses of cheap wine in hand and the storm turning night into day with its frequent lightning, Claire and Ethan sat on the small covered balcony of the apartment. Cookie settled comfortably in his owner's lap, occasionally looking at Claire as if he already considered her a friend. "So, 2 cookies," Ethan commented, breaking the silence. "What a coincidence," Claire smiled. "I named him that because when he was a puppy, he was small and brown. Reminded me of a cookie. And you?" Ethan's face softened. "My grandmother. She ate a cookie every day. Said it was the secret to reaching 90 with all her teeth." He paused, looking out at the rain. "When she passed away, 5 years ago, she left a request for me to adopt a dog. Said I needed someone to love me unconditionally. That same week, I found this little guy abandoned near my office." "Your grandmother sounds like she was a wise woman," Claire commented, surprised by the vulnerability she saw in the man who, less than an hour ago, had seemed so intimidating. "The wisest I ever knew," he confirmed. "She's the one who taught me to sew. We started the Cole Couture empire on a sewing machine in her living room." Claire choked on her wine, coughing uncontrollably. Ethan leaned over to help her, patting her lightly on the back. "Cole Couture," she finally managed to articulate. "You're that Ethan Cole?" He seemed genuinely confused. "I thought you knew who I was." "I knew you were rich. From the car, the suit, and the way you found my address in seconds," Claire explained, still catching her breath. "But I had no idea you were the owner of the biggest fashion brand in the country. I've had clippings of your collections in my inspiration notebook since college." A shy, almost embarrassed smile appeared on Ethan's lips. "Usually, people know who I am before they even meet me. It's refreshing to meet someone who hasn't researched my entire life." Claire bit her lip, suddenly aware that she was in her loungewear, faded leggings, and a t-shirt with a cat print, talking to one of the biggest names in American fashion. But instead of feeling intimidated, she found herself fascinated by the duality of this man. The ruthless executive who had called demanding his dog back and this other Ethan, who smiled when talking about his grandmother and drank cheap wine without complaint. "Can I show you something?" she asked, suddenly animated. Without waiting for an answer, she ran inside and returned with a worn sketchbook. "This was my senior thesis project, a collection inspired by the modernist architecture of Boston." Ethan flipped through the sketchbook with growing interest, his expert eyes catching details most would ignore. "This is extraordinary, Claire. You have a unique eye. Why aren't you working at a fashion house?" Her smile faltered. "I tried. I sent portfolios to all of them, including Cole Couture. All I got was silence or polite rejection letters." Ethan closed the sketchbook, suddenly serious. "Our hiring director needs to be fired if she let your talent slip by." Claire laughed, thinking he was joking, but the look on his face said otherwise. "Are you serious?" "I rarely say anything without intention," he replied. "We're developing a new line, American Roots. Your aesthetic would be perfect." Claire's heart sped up. It was her dream materializing right in front of her, literally sitting on her balcony drinking cheap wine. "Is this a job offer or the wine talking?" she asked, trying to hide the hope in her voice. Ethan looked at her directly, his green eyes intense even in the dim light. "It's an offer to show your full portfolio to our creative director on Monday. In my office." A silence heavy with possibility hung between them. Claire was about to answer when the lights flickered and went out completely. The entire apartment plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the occasional flash of lightning. "It seems I'll need the hospitality services of my dog's kidnapper," Ethan commented, his voice closer than Claire expected. "I have candles." "And more wine," she offered, thankful for the darkness hiding her blush. "And the couch isn't as uncomfortable as it looks." "I've slept in worse places," he replied, and there was something in his voice that suggested he wasn't just being polite. By the flickering light of the candles Claire lit, the two continued talking about design, about their dogs, about memories of their grandmothers. The hours passed without them noticing, the storm outside forgotten as they created their own world inside that small apartment. When Claire finally fell asleep on the couch, next to Ethan, her head inadvertently resting on his shoulder, she didn't know she had just participated in the most decisive night of her career and perhaps of her life. And Ethan, watching her peaceful face in the candlelight, wondered how a simple mix-up with dogs had brought more life into his world in the last few hours than all the glamorous events of the last few years. The dawn brought a surprisingly clear sky over Boston, as if the previous night's storm had just been a dream. Claire woke to the sound of pans in the kitchen and the unmistakable aroma of freshly brewed coffee. For a moment, she was disoriented. She rarely had visitors, let alone someone making breakfast in her kitchen. Then reality hit her. Ethan Cole. The Ethan Cole had slept on her couch, and apparently, he was now cooking. She scrambled up, realizing with horror that she had drooled slightly on the shoulder of the shirt that must have cost more than her rent. She ran to the bathroom, trying to tame her hair and look minimally presentable before facing her unexpected guest. When she finally entered the kitchen, the scene she found was surreal. Ethan Cole, still wearing his suit trousers and shirt, now with the sleeves rolled up, was preparing scrambled eggs like a professional chef. Cookie watched everything from his privileged position on a chair, tongue out in anticipation. "Good morning," Ethan said upon seeing her. "I hope you don't mind. I figured breakfast would be a good way to thank you for the hospitality. You know how to cook?" was the only thing Claire could articulate, still processing the domesticity of the scene. Ethan laughed, a sound she was beginning to appreciate. "My grandmother didn't raise a useless man. I can run a fashion empire, but I also know how to scramble a decent egg." Claire approached, watching the dexterity with which he finished the dish. "I have something for you," he said, pointing to a folder on the table. "I printed it while you were asleep." Curious, Claire opened the folder and found a preliminary contract with the Cole Couture logo, a consulting contract for the new American Roots collection. "Are you serious?" she murmured, running her fingers over the paper as if it might disappear at any moment. "As I said last night, I rarely say anything without intention," Ethan replied, placing the eggs on 2 plates. "It's just an initial 3-month contract. If it works well for both sides, we can discuss something permanent." Claire quickly read the terms and nearly choked when she saw the payment amount. It was more than she earned in 6 months as a freelancer. "Why?" she finally asked, looking at him. "Why me? There are thousands of talented designers out there." Ethan put the plates on the table and sat across from her. I believe in signs, Claire. My grandmother always said the universe puts the right people in our path at the most unexpected times. He paused, toying with his fork. Besides, your work is genuinely good. It has soul. Something that's missing from much of the fashion industry today. Something in his gaze made Claire's heart race. And it wasn't just about the professional opportunity. And what happens after I return your dog and get mine back? She asked, trying to keep the conversation on professional ground. An enigmatic smile played on Ethan's lips. I think we can find reasons to keep seeing each other. Professionally, of course. Of course, Claire repeated, feeling her cheeks burn. Ethan's phone rang, breaking the moment. He answered quickly, his face returning to the professional expression she had seen initially. I understand. Yes, I'll be there in an hour. He hung up and looked at Claire. The pet shop opened. Your cookie is waiting for you. An hour later, at Positively Chic, a scene unfolded that would make any observer smile. Two identical Yorkshire Terriers, both named Cookie, reuniting with their respective owners. Claire's dog leaped into her arms, licking her face while whimpering with happiness. Beside her, Ethan received the same treatment from his little companion. I guess this is the official conclusion of the great Cookie kidnapping, Claire joked, relieved to have her friend back. On the contrary, Ethan replied, adjusting the tie he had retrieved from his car. I think it's just the beginning. He handed her a card. Monday 9 a.m. my office. Don't be late. The tone was professional, almost cold, a stark contrast to the man who had scrambled eggs in her kitchen hours before. Claire just nodded, clutching her cookie tighter. The weekend passed in a blur. Claire barely slept. Half of her was euphoric, the other half terrified. She sifted through her modest wardrobe, realizing that nothing she owned was suitable for Cole Couture. In an act of desperation and faith, she used a portion of her emergency savings to buy a decent blazer and new shoes. It's an investment, she repeated to herself. On Monday, at 8:45 a.m., Claire walked into the lobby of Cole Couture. It was a glass and steel skyscraper in the Seaport District, a monument to luxury that made her small Somerville apartment look like a dollhouse. The air smelled of fresh lilies and something expensive she couldn't identify. The sound was muffled, just the soft click of heels on marble. Claire Thompson. To see Mr. Cole, she told the receptionist, who sized her up with a polite but judgmental gaze. One moment. The receptionist spoke into a headset. You may go up. 20th floor. His assistant, Sylvia, is waiting. Claire entered the elevator, her heart pounding so hard she feared it was audible. The 20th floor was different. It was an open, minimalist space with white walls, designer furniture, and breathtaking views of the city. People glided through the environment wearing pieces Claire had only seen in magazines. A tall blonde woman in an impeccable black jumpsuit approached. Her smile didn't reach her cold eyes. Claire Thompson. I'm Sylvia, creative director and Ethan's executive assistant. The emphasis on Ethan was clear. He informed me about your unusual meeting. Quite the story. Claire immediately felt defensive. It was a mistake. I'm here to show my portfolio. Of course, Sylvia said, her tone bored. Ethan is on a conference call with Paris. He asked me to get you settled. Follow me. Sylvia led her not to an office, but to a small workstation in a noisy corner of the design studio near the printers. You can wait here. He'll see you when he can. The hours dragged on. 9 a.m. became 10, then 11. Claire watched designers presenting fabrics, models doing fittings. No one spoke to her. She felt invisible, a fraud. Panic began to set in. Had Ethan changed his mind? Was it all just a storm-induced delusion? At noon, her stomach was growling, but she didn't dare leave. Finally, at 12:30, Sylvia reappeared. He can see you now. Claire grabbed her portfolio, her hands sweating. Sylvia led her to Ethan's office. It was enormous, with glass walls on 3 sides. Ethan stood behind a massive mahogany desk, speaking on the phone in English, his face serious, his power posture on full display. He motioned for her to sit without interrupting the call. This was not the Ethan who drank cheap wine on her balcony. This was the magnate. He finally hung up. Ms. Thompson, apologies for the wait. Monday mornings. His voice was formal. Mr. Cole, no problem, she lied. Sylvia mentioned you brought your work. Yes. She opened the portfolio on his desk. He flipped through it quickly, much faster than on the night of the storm. Good, very good. He closed the sketchbook. As I mentioned, We're launching American Roots. The contract I gave you is for consultation. However, he paused, and Claire's heart sank. Sylvia, rightly, pointed out that it would be unfair to the internal team to simply bring someone in from the outside. Sylvia's face, standing beside the desk, was a mask of false modesty. So, Ethan continued, we'll have a test. The internal team and you will receive the same brief. I want 3 complete concepts by Friday. The best concept will lead the collection's development. Claire felt a cold wave. It was a test. A competition. Understood, Mr. Cole, she said, her voice firm despite her internal trembling. Excellent. Sylvia will give you the brief and access to our materials archive. Welcome to Cole Couture, Ms. Thompson. I hope you know how to swim. The sharks here are real. He gave a half smile, the first glimpse of the man from that night. Sylvia handed Claire a tablet with the brief. Everything you need is in there. Color matrices, brand guidelines, approved inspirations. Your access to the studio is until 8 p.m. Good luck. Her tone suggested Claire would need it. Claire spent the next 3 days in creative hell. The brief was restrictive, full of corporate jargon and commercially viable color palettes that seemed lifeless. She tried to sketch, but everything that came out looked like a cheap imitation of Cole Couture's existing style. She was exhausted, intimidated, and suffering from a severe case of imposter syndrome. On Wednesday night, she was alone in the studio, surrounded by crumpled sketches. She looked at the approved inspirations on the tablet, generic images of Mardi Gras and California beaches. It had nothing to do with her roots, with the Boston architecture, with the textures of Rochester. That's when she realized Sylvia had given her the wrong brief, or rather a generic brief designed to discourage. She remembered Ethan mentioning the architecture in her drawings. That was nowhere in this brief. A cold anger washed over her. She was being sabotaged. Claire closed the tablet. To hell with the brief, she muttered. She grabbed a new sketchbook and started from scratch. She ignored the approved color palettes and sought her own references. The earth tones of New England autumns, the deep green of the pines, the gray of Frank Lloyd Wright's concrete, the gilded gold of the Newport mansions. She worked all night, fueled by coffee and spite. By Thursday, she was exhausted, but she had something she was proud of, something that was hers. On Friday morning, she walked into the conference room. Ethan was at the head of the table. Sylvia was at his side. 2 other designers, looking confident, presented their concepts first. They were beautiful, polished, and safe, exactly what the brief asked for. Thank you, team, Ethan said without enthusiasm. Ms. Thompson. Claire stood up, her legs shaking. She put her sketches on the projector. Mr. Cole, Sylvia. I read the brief I was given, she began, her voice clear, and I decided to ignore it. There was a sharp intake of breath from Sylvia. Ethan raised an eyebrow. American roots aren't just beaches and parties, Claire continued, gaining confidence. They are the strength of our landscapes. They're the mix of Gilded Age gold and modern concrete. It's the texture of granite and the fluidity of the rivers. I didn't use the approved color palette. I used this. She projected a photo she had taken from her grandmother's window in Rochester, the orange sunset sky against the dark earth. This is our route, she said. She spoke for 20 minutes, her heart in her throat. When she finished, the room was silent. Sylvia was the first to speak. This is completely off-brand, Ethan. It's rustic. Our clients in Milan won't understand. Furthermore, she disobeyed a direct guideline. Ethan remained silent, staring at Claire's drawings. He stood up and walked to the projector, examining a sketch of a structured coat that mimicked the curves of a Wright building. He turned to the room. Sylvia, the brief you gave the team was last year's brief for the resort collection. I wanted to see what they would do with something safe. He turned to Claire, and what you would do when confronted with it. Sylvia's face went pale. The internal team's work is correct, Ethan said diplomatically, but Ms. Thompson's work is the future of this brand. Congratulations, Claire. You are leading the American Roots collection. Sylvia, I want the vendor contracts for the granite-infused textiles on my desk by this afternoon. Claire felt the floor drop out from under her. She had done it. In the following weeks, Claire dove into the work. It was harder than she had ever imagined. Long nights, impossible deadlines, and the veiled hostility from Sylvia, who was now forced to execute her vision. But Claire was in her element. Ethan kept a professional distance. He supervised, he approved, but the man from the storm had vanished. It hurt more than Claire would admit. There was a tension between them, an unresolved electricity every time they were in the same room. One night, around 2 a.m., Claire was in the studio struggling with an embroidery palette. The door opened. It was Ethan, still in his suit, but with his tie loosened. "Are you ever going home?" he asked, his voice soft. "I can't get this shade of gold right," she murmured, exhausted. He sat beside her, taking the embroidery hoop. "My grandmother would say you're missing a copper thread, to catch the light like the sun on a church." They worked in silence for an hour, their shoulders almost touching. The smell of his cologne was familiar now. "Why did you do it?" she finally asked. "You want the test, the fake brief." "I had to know," he said, not looking at her. "I had to know if your talent was real or if I was just charmed by the storm." He faced her. "And I needed everyone here to know you earned your place, that it wasn't a gift from me." "And now?" she whispered. "Now," he said, his voice low, "is the biggest risk of all." He leaned in, and Claire held her breath. Their lips were inches apart when the building's fire alarm blared, a routine middle-of-the-night test. The moment was broken. The work continued, but something had changed. The tension was palpable. The collection was almost finished when the bomb dropped. A fashion gossip column published a venomous note. "The mogul and the millennial. Is Ethan Cole prepping his new collection or his new girlfriend? Sources say Cole Couture's new protege earned her spot in creative ways." Claire was devastated. It was her worst nightmare. The looks in the office the next day were unbearable. She went straight to Ethan's office, the column crumpled in her hand. "I quit," she said, tears burning. "I won't let them destroy your reputation or invalidate my work." Ethan took the paper from her hand, read the note, and his face darkened in a way Claire had never seen. He hit the intercom. "Cancel my meetings and get the PR team in here now." "Ethan, I'm serious," Claire said. "So am I," he said. "You're not going anywhere." 2 hours later, Ethan Cole did something he never did. He held an impromptu press conference. Claire watched, stunned, on a screen in the studio. "There have been rumors about the integrity of my new collection," Ethan said to the reporters. "Let me be clear. The American Roots collection is the most innovative work this company has produced in a decade, and it is entirely thanks to the singular genius of our new head designer, Claire Thompson." He looked directly into the camera. "Her talent is the only story here, and to prove it, we are moving up the launch. The show will be at New York Fashion Week in 6 months." It was a masterstroke. He not only defended her, but doubled down, staking the entire brand's prestige on her talent. Sylvia, whom Claire suspected had leaked the note, looked furious. 6 months later, the buzz in the main hall of the NYFW venue grew as guests took their seats. The debut of Cole Couture's American Roots collection was the most anticipated event of the season, especially after rumors of a new designer who had revolutionized the traditional brand's aesthetic. Backstage, Claire Thompson nervously adjusted the final dress of the collection, a stunning piece inspired by the coast of Maine with fluid layers and shades of blue and green that seemed to move like water with the slightest motion. "It's perfect," a familiar voice said behind her. "Just like you." Ethan approached, impeccable in his navy blue suit. In the last 6 months, the initial consulting contract had turned into a permanent position as associate creative director, and the professional relationship, well, it had turned into something much more significant as soon as the dust from the gossip column settled and the intense work brought them together for good. "I'm terrified," Claire confessed. "What if they hate it?" Ethan took her hands, a gesture that had become familiar and comforting. "Impossible. You turned my vision into something even better." "We turned it," she corrected, smiling. "We make a good team, don't you think?" "The best," he agreed, leaning in to kiss her softly. "So good, in fact, that I have a proposal to make our partnership even more official." Before Claire could process what was happening, Ethan knelt, taking a small velvet box from his pocket. "Claire Thompson, you kidnapped my dog and my heart on the same day. It would be the greatest honor of my life if you would agree to be my wife." Tears blurred her vision as she looked at the ring, a delicate white gold piece with a small diamond surrounded by tiny emeralds matching the color of his eyes. "Yes," she replied simply, the words caught in her throat by emotion. As Ethan placed the ring on her finger, 2 identical cookies came running backstage, each wearing a small bow matching the colors of the collection. A surprise organized by the team, who knew just how important the 2 cookies had been in bringing the couple together.